We have just over 1 week until Election Day, and here at NBC5, we're highlighting the key races that will be on your ballot. We begin our broadcast with the race for state auditor. It's an important position that makes sure that our tax dollars are being spent as intended. The ballots are out, and two Vermonters are vying for your vote for state auditor, Democrat Doug Hoffer and Republican H. Brooke Page. Hoffer, the incumbent, is running for his last term.
Well, I've been through this a few times. This is my seventh campaign, and I've won six of them. So actually my eighth, but I look forward to another term.
He enjoys the important job of leading the state's auditing department, an essential service that verifies that money is being spent as intended and that state-run departments are functioning properly.
Well, our office is effectively the state's accountability office. And because our work is focused within the office on performance auditing, it is very similar to the work I did for 20 years as a sole proprietor public policy analyst. The office contracts out for an audit each year of the annual financial statement and the so-called single audit with the federal government, which is about compliance with federal law. So that leaves us free to do performance auditing, which answers the question, are the programs funded by the legislature achieving the goals they intended? I should also say there's the other half of it, depending on how you break it up, is also the nuts and bolts of state government. We're a very big organization. It isn't just that we have a lot of employees providing a lot of services, but it's a big business. And how they do their business is very important, particularly in terms of efficiency. The effectiveness part is more about the policy stuff, and that is more than half of what we do. So to answer your question, I enjoy the work. I think we add value, and I have a very capable team.
And if elected to a final term, he has some goals that he hopes to achieve.
I'm particularly interested in healthcare. It's not something I was focused on as a policy guy. I did more economic development and tax policy, but healthcare is almost 20% of our entire state GDP, one. Second, the services provided reach every household and family in Vermont. Third, it's completely out of control. When I first came to Vermont in the late 80s, and it's Howard Dean's first years as governor, we all were kind of proud and pleased that the per capita spending on healthcare in Vermont was one of the lowest in the country. Now it's one of the highest. We have the Green Mountain Care Board, and I'm happy to say that it appears that they're much better at asking the tough questions and moving in what I would consider the right direction to control these truly out of control costs. And, it's a tough situation because the major players, hospitals, not all of them, they're not all created equal, but they have immense economic and political power. Let's be honest. And that doesn't mean we can't work together, but it's hard. It's really hard. So we will continue to work on healthcare. I have a personal interest in economic development, and we will continue to work in that area. And we will continue to do jobs that are about how government works, not so much policy stuff, but the nuts and bolts. So I like the work, but I can't do it forever, and I'm no spring chicken.
Meantime, although H. Brooke Page is asking voters to cast their ballots for him, he has other plans for this role.
I'm doing the sacrificial lamb kind of thing here, that I'm running to win so I can give it to the most qualified person I know, and that happens not to be me. And if I'm elected and sworn in, I immediately intend to go to Governor Scott and ask him to find a highly qualified replacement for me. Interestingly, Linda Joy Sullivan. Doug Hoffer does not have an accounting degree nor an auditing credentials. And I certainly do not. I am neither an accountant nor an auditor. But I have, on several occasions, tried to get a highly qualified person who many people know, Linda Joy Sullivan, who now is the mayor of Newport, Vermont, to become our auditor.
Here's Hoffer's response.
Well, he's entitled to his opinion, but I have to say, with all due respect, he really doesn't understand much about what we do in our office. First of all, historically, our office did those two things I mentioned before, the audit of the state's financial statements and the so-called single audit, which reviews our compliance with federal law. We still do those. We just farm it out to an independent audit firm. That leaves us free to do performance auditing. So we do more than he's asking for.
Election Day is November 5th. The race for state treasurer is another one that we're watching closely. We're profiling the candidates, Mike Pieciak and Joshua Beckhover, this morning. The countdown to Election Day is on, and the race for Vermont State Treasurer is heating up. 25-year-old Republican Joshua Beckhover is trying to unseat Democratic incumbent Mike Pieciak, who is running for his second term.
It's been an honor to serve the state of Vermont. Prior to becoming treasurer, I served the state for about 10 years at the Department of Financial Regulation as a commissioner and as a deputy. And these last 2 years as treasurer have been excellent. We've been really focused on the issues that I think matter the most to Vermont. Number one of which is housing. The shortage of housing is hurting everybody. It's hurting businesses. It's hurting families. It's hurting communities. It's hurting people that are struggling with homelessness as well. So one of the first things we did was expand a program by $100 million and dedicated it toward housing, investing in housing so that we have more homes for folks that are experiencing homelessness, for individuals that are serving their community as first responders or nurses or teachers, or also to grow the economy as well, that we have more homes to grow the economy. We know that the rising cost of housing in Vermont is the number one driver of inflation. So by building more housing, we're supporting the middle class, making it more affordable to live in Vermont. And that's been something that we've been really proud of.
One is sort of moving away from so much investment in BlackRock products. I think that really injures Vermonters, but I think it really, through classical economic theory, you can tell that if all the Treasury departments stood up and said, we're not going to invest in BlackRock, there would be less demand pressure on single family homes. And maybe that, maybe the solution isn't necessarily divesting immediately, or it's something like, instead of just excludes tobacco and single family homes, or there's some guardrails there to prevent our investments in BlackRock from reaching the pockets of Invitation Homes and all these other firms that purchase single family homes. That's one. Another one is I want to change how the 10% in the VT program really works. But I want to move away from just these nebulous and airy approaches to the 10% in VT.
The treasurer is tasked with making sure money is available to fund programs that are approved by the legislature. With affordability a major concern for many voters after recent property tax increases, each candidate has their own approaches to tackle this issue.
So fundamentally, the way that we're going to work out of that, and I'm optimistic that we can, is to support working families, to build more housing so we have more workers moving to Vermont. We have more taxpayers supporting all of the important services that we need. We have more young families so that we have a younger healthcare mix so that rates aren't going up like they are. Really, all of the answers boil down to this critical shortage of housing that we need to build to attract young working families here in Vermont. And we have seen that people want to live in Vermont. The data since the pandemic is clear. People have moved here. People enjoy our natural beauty, our outdoor recreational opportunities. We have a lot of advantages in our state, but without solving housing, we're going to have a lot of additional problems that we're going to have to deal with. So housing is number one.
The part of the Treasury office is to make recommendations to state legislature and say, can the Treasury afford such an expense? Or can we look for efficiency gains? And I think that's another reason why you want an economist as opposed to a lawyer. So yes, the answer is yes. I do want to look to save money because frivolous spending is what leads us to run out of money. I mean, you can continue to raise taxes, but we already have one of the highest tax burdens per capita in the contiguous 48 states. So we really need to be more efficient with what we have.
In terms of experience, Beckhover, a credit analyst with the Farm Credit System, feels the treasurer should have an economics degree, which Pieciak doesn't.
Mike has, I think, masked his inability to understand economics and buzzwords. So housing, right? We all agree, and housing will remain part of my program, but social equity and carbon footprint, I don't think really encapsulate anything meaningful. They're just buzzwords to mask the fact that he doesn't have any specifics. So as I'm an economist, I studied economics.
I've served the state now for 2 years as state treasurer, and Our finances are in good shape and our investments are in good shape. For 6 years, I was the commissioner at the Vermont Department of Financial Regulation, where we regulated banks, insurance companies, captive insurance companies, securities firms. I was a deputy commissioner for a couple of years doing that work as well. I worked in New York City, working for companies that had really sophisticated, transactions. So I've had a lot of experience in our economy and a lot of experience working on the economy in Vermont. So, I have been very grateful for the support Vermonters see in me.
Voters will decide this race on November 5th.